I don't like being a symbol. I mean, I think it's not very sexy. I think we all aspire to be sexy in our relationships, but sexy for the world is, I don't know, it brought a lot of attention I didn't like.
Pamela Anderson's Hollywood journey, from heartbreak to redemption. Pamela Anderson is a name that evokes images of the iconic Baywatch lifeguard, Playboy covers, and a life constantly under the unforgiving glare of the spotlight. In the 90s, she was the epitome of glitz and glamour, a global symbol whose fame seemed unstoppable. But behind the perfect image and the glamorous lifestyle was a much more complex story, one filled with emotional scars, personal struggles, and painful decisions. Pamela's journey through Hollywood wasn't just about fame and fortune, but about surviving an industry that often saw her as nothing more than a commodity. Yet, through it all, Pamela found the strength to rise above the chaos, reclaim her power, and rewrite her own narrative. Her story is not just a tale of scandal and celebrity, it's a powerful reminder of resilience, self-discovery, and the courage to redefine oneself in the face of a world that tries to define you. Pamela Anderson's journey to stardom didn't begin in the glamour of Hollywood or the world of Playboy. It started in the small, quiet town of Ladysmith, British Columbia, on July 1st, 1967, during Canada's 100th anniversary. While many would imagine a charming, idyllic childhood, Pamela's early years were anything but peaceful. The picturesque backdrop of Ladysmith was starkly contrasted by the emotional and financial turmoil that simmered within the walls of her home. Pamela was born into a family marked by chaos. Her father, Barry, was a furnace repairman with a penchant for gambling, a habit that often overshadowed his role as a provider. Pamela's mother, Carol, worked tirelessly as a waitress, juggling multiple jobs to keep the family afloat. Despite her best efforts, Carol was often overwhelmed, and the constant strain of their financial situation created a volatile atmosphere. Arguments between her parents were frequent, leaving Pamela to grow up in a home where love was often overshadowed by tension and instability. As a young girl, Pamela became accustomed to the emotional unpredictability of her home life. The sounds of her parents fighting, the weight of financial stress, and the constant worry about their future created an environment where peace seemed like a distant dream. The emotional strain took a toll on Pamela, leaving her to seek solace in moments of quiet retreat. The natural beauty of her surroundings in Ladysmith provided brief moments of escape from the turbulence at home. Whether it was wandering through the woods, looking out over the ocean, or finding solace in the simple pleasure of being alone, Pamela turned to nature to find peace in a world that seemed far too loud. Yet, no matter how much time she spent outdoors or away from the chaos, the emotional scars of her home life couldn't be avoided. The greatest pain Pamela faced in these early years came not from her parents' strained relationship, but from a trauma that would haunt her for years to come. From ages 6 to 10, Pamela was subjected to abuse at the hands of a female babysitter. This painful chapter in her life left an indelible mark on her sense of self-worth and her perception of the world around her. The guilt she carried in the aftermath of this abuse became overwhelming, and at one point, she found herself fantasizing about vengeance. What followed was a deeply ironic and tragic turn of events. The babysitter who had caused Pamela so much pain died in a car accident the very next day after Pamela's fantasies of revenge. For Pamela, the timing of this event left her with an overwhelming sense of guilt. She couldn't help but wonder if her feelings had somehow played a role in her babysitter's untimely death. The confusion and shame from this traumatic period stayed with Pamela for years, and it was a pivotal moment in her young life, one that would shape her understanding of herself, her body, and the world she inhabited. Her relationship with her body became one of deep complexity. From an early age, Pamela's self-worth was tied to her physical appearance. This struggle with body image wasn't just about how others saw her, it was about how she saw herself. The trauma she had experienced left Pamela with a distorted perception of her own body, something that would evolve over time, but never fully disappear. She grew up believing that her worth was tied to her beauty, a belief that would become increasingly complicated as her public life began to unfold. Through all of this, Pamela found a way to survive. Her resilience, even in the face of so many challenges, is perhaps the most defining characteristic of her early years. Despite the chaos at home and the abuse she endured, Pamela managed to forge a sense of strength and independence that would serve her well in the years to come. There was no fairy tale ending to her childhood, no easy resolution to the pain she endured. Instead, She learned to navigate the world with a quiet determination. The harshness of her early years gave her the fortitude to face even the most daunting challenges later in life. But the scars remained, shaping the woman she would become. The turmoil at home, the abusive babysitter, and the guilt that followed all played a role in the development of Pamela's complicated relationship with fame, beauty, and self-worth. Yet, as she would later come to realize, those experiences, though painful, were not her undoing. They became the very foundation of her resilience, the bedrock upon which she would build her life and career. Through it all, Pamela learned that she could survive. She could endure the emotional turbulence, the loss, the pain, and still emerge on the other side. She could take the fragments of her broken childhood and turn them into something that would allow her to rise above. The child who had retreated into nature to find solace would later find strength within herself, a strength that would help her face the unpredictable world of Hollywood. The trauma she faced in her early years didn't define her. Instead, it served as the fire that forged her into a woman capable of facing whatever came next, with grit, grace, and an unshakable sense of self. Pamela Anderson arrived in California with stars in her eyes, hopeful that the bright lights of Hollywood would offer her the escape and success she had always dreamed of. With the promise of stardom beckoning, she set foot into a world that was far more complex and far more dangerous than she could have anticipated. What seemed like a glittering oasis of opportunity quickly revealed itself to be a land of manipulation, exploitation, and heartbreak. Hollywood, for all its glamour, often operates on a twisted undercurrent of compromise and illusion. For women like Pamela, young and ambitious, it became a place where dreams were not just pursued, but sold. The allure of fame masked a harsh reality, a reality where promises of stardom often came with a price. And that price was often far steeper than anyone could have imagined. In those early days, Pamela's naivety was both her strength and her greatest vulnerability. She had come to California full of hope, eager to build a career in an industry that, on the surface, promised glitz and excitement. But what she quickly discovered was that Hollywood was not interested in her dreams. It was interested in controlling her narrative. This was a space where women, especially young and beautiful women, were seen less as individuals with ambition and more as objects to be consumed. Auditions, which she initially believed would be opportunities to showcase her talents, often turned out to be little more than uncomfortable and even dangerous situations. She found herself in rooms that felt more like traps than opportunities, where producers, agents, and other figures in the industry crossed lines that should have never been approached. One such moment that stands out in Pamela's memory was the time she was asked to enter a hotel room alone with a man who greeted her in nothing but a bathrobe. The situation felt wrong from the start, and her instincts screamed at her to walk away. Yet, in the haze of ambition and the pressure to succeed, she questioned whether her hesitations were unfounded. This encounter, like so many others, opened her eyes to the harsh truth about the Hollywood she had entered. It was a world where boundaries were often pushed, and women were frequently subjected to uncomfortable and sometimes dangerous situations in exchange for a chance at fame. As much as these experiences rattled Pamela, they also served as lessons in self-preservation. The industry's dark side, its objectification of women, its parasitic nature, was something she couldn't ignore, but she learned to navigate it. She quickly realized that she had to maintain a sense of self if she wanted to survive. The industry's demands were unrelenting, but Pamela was determined not to let it strip her of her dignity. She was not just a pretty face or a body to be commodified. She was an individual with dreams and ambitions of her own, but surviving Hollywood wasn't without its emotional toll. Pamela's early experiences in the industry forced her to make painful compromises. She often found herself in situations where she had to choose between her integrity and the opportunity to advance in her career. Those moments tested her in ways she wasn't prepared for, forcing her to make decisions that would haunt her for years. At times, the industry's expectations pushed her to a breaking point, as the weight of being seen only for her physicality became overwhelming. There were moments when Pamela was reduced to her appearance, when it felt like nothing more than her looks mattered in a world that was obsessed with image. Yet, despite the objectification and manipulation, she learned to rise above it. She began to take control over her own image, using the very tools Hollywood tried to exploit her for to shape her own path. Pamela's resilience was her greatest weapon. It was not easy, and it often came at a significant emotional and psychological cost. but she fought to retain her autonomy in an industry that sought to take it from her at every turn. She knew that in order to survive, she couldn't let Hollywood break her spirit. In a place where so many people had lost themselves, Pamela fought fiercely to hold on to who she was and what she believed in. Despite the challenges, there were moments of triumph. Pamela slowly began to carve out a space for herself in Hollywood, one where her image was no longer just something to be consumed, but something she controlled. She became a symbol of strength and resilience, not just for those who admired her beauty, but for those who saw the depth of her struggles and the strength that had allowed her to rise above them. In the end, Pamela's survival in Hollywood wasn't about playing the game. It was about learning how to stand her ground in a world that tried to tear her down. The sacrifices she made were great, but her determination to not let the industry define her was greater. Pamela understood that Hollywood, for all its glittering promises, was a place where dreams could quickly turn into nightmares. But, armed with a fierce sense of self, she proved that it was possible to navigate its dark side and come out stronger on the other side. Her journey through Hollywood was not easy. It was a story of survival, of learning to withstand the pressures of an industry that thrived on exploitation. But Pamela did more than just survive. She thrived. Through every difficult encounter, every painful choice, and every moment of doubt, she found a way to retain her essence. She refused to be broken, even when everything around her seemed designed to do just that. In a world that wanted to objectify and diminish her, Pamela Anderson proved that true power comes from within, and that no matter how dark the world may be, a person can always fight to find their own light. Pamela Anderson's entry into Playboy in 1990 was a defining moment in her career, a moment that would not only catapult her into global fame, but also shift the way the world viewed her. No longer the innocent girl next door, Pamela embraced a new identity, one that was unapologetically confident, bold, and sexually liberated. Becoming Playmate of the Month, and later appearing on the cover numerous times, she quickly became one of the most recognizable faces of the 1990s. For many, she was the epitome of sensuality, the personification of desire. But for Pamela, this new public persona came with its own set of challenges. At first, the attention was intoxicating. The validation she received for embracing her sexuality was empowering, affirming her place in an industry that often reduced women to their physicality. But as time went on, Pamela began to feel the weight of the fame that was built around her image. Her beauty, once a source of empowerment, became a Pamela Anderson's entry into Playboy in 1990. Was a defining moment in her career, a moment that would not only catapult her into global fame, but also shift the way the world viewed her. No longer the innocent girl next door, Pamela embraced a new identity, one that was unapologetically confident, bold, and sexually liberated. Becoming Playmate of the Month, and later appearing on the cover numerous times, she quickly became one of the most recognizable faces of the 1990s. For many, she was the epitome of sensuality, the personification of desire. But for Pamela, this new public persona came with its own set of challenges. At first, the attention was intoxicating. The validation she received for embracing her sexuality was empowering, affirming her place in an industry that often reduced women to their physicality. But as time went on, Pamela began to feel the weight of the fame that was built around her image. Her beauty, once a source of empowerment, became a double-edged sword. The world's obsession with her chest, in particular, overshadowed everything else about her. She was constantly reduced to her body, and as her physicality became the focus of every conversation, Pamela found herself frustrated by the limitations of being seen solely as a symbol. The pressure to maintain this image was overwhelming. In response, she underwent implant surgery, a decision she would later question. At the time, it seemed like the only way to compete in an industry that placed so much emphasis on appearance. But as her fame grew, so did the realization that her body had become the sole currency of her success. People weren't seeing her for her intelligence, her personality, or her creativity. They were only seeing the physical shell she inhabited. This intense focus on her body left Pamela feeling invisible in every other way, and she longed to be recognized as more than just a pair of curves. Despite the frustration that accompanied being reduced to her appearance, Pamela made a conscious decision to own her sexuality. She stopped apologizing for her body and instead learned to take pride in it. Embracing her style became an act of empowerment rather than a compromise. It was her choice, and she wasn't going to let the world define her based on their limited perception of who she was. This journey was not without its internal conflicts. There were moments when Pamela questioned the value placed on her physical appearance. She wondered if people would ever care about her intellect, her opinions, or her talents. Was she only worth what people saw on the surface? Despite these doubts, she chose to push forward, recognizing that her sexuality was a part of who she was, not the whole of her being. It was a powerful lesson in reclaiming agency over one's own image and refusing to be confined by societal expectations. Pamela's decision to embrace her appeal, even when it seemed like the world was obsessed with reducing her to just her looks, became a statement of self-possession. She was no longer the passive object of others' desires. She was an active participant in shaping how she was perceived. Her image was her own, and no one, not even Hollywood, could take that away from her. Through the lens of Playboy, Pamela learned to take control of her narrative, to refuse to be defined by anyone but herself. In an industry that thrives on objectification, Pamela Anderson carved out a space where she could be both sexually powerful and self-aware. She embraced her body, not as a tool for others to exploit, but as a part of her identity that was deeply personal and empowering. By doing so, she sent a message that would resonate for years to come. Embracing one's sexuality is not a weakness, but a source of strength. In a world that constantly tried to define her, Pamela Anderson learned the invaluable lesson of owning her image, embracing her body, and never letting anyone reduce her to one-dimensional labels. Though the world continued to focus on her physicality, Pamela found peace in knowing that she had reclaimed her power. It was a journey of self-acceptance, one that allowed her to rise above the noise and be seen for who she truly was, much more than just a beautiful body. Pamela Anderson's relationship with Tommy Lee was one of the most talked-about love stories of the 1990s, captivating the public with its intensity and passion. Their whirlwind romance, marked by a marriage just days after they met, seemed like something out of a fairy tale. Yet, beneath the surface of their passionate connection lay a much darker reality, one filled with toxic patterns that would eventually tear their relationship apart. At the start, the chemistry between Pamela and Tommy was undeniable. Their love was fast and furious, filled with the kind of excitement that only a rock star and a rising celebrity could experience. Their connection was electric, their bond seemingly unbreakable. However, the very intensity that made their relationship so thrilling also made it unstable. As their connection deepened, Tommy's unpredictable behavior began to surface. Tommy, a notorious figure known for his wild antics and rebellious nature, had a temper that often flared. What started as small flashes of anger gradually grew into a constant presence in their marriage. His possessiveness and controlling tendencies started to erode the relationship, turning what should have been an exciting adventure into a psychological battle. In the beginning, Pamela tried to overlook these behaviors, blinded by her love for him and the excitement of their connection. But the cracks began to show, and with each passing day, Pamela found herself increasingly suffocated by Tommy's demands and insecurities. The media, of course, added fuel to the fire. As a public couple, they were under constant scrutiny, with every aspect of their relationship being dissected by the tabloids. Pamela was no stranger to the paparazzi's relentless intrusion, but the pressure became unbearable as Tommy's behavior spiraled out of control. The tabloids were fascinated by their every move, and their obsession only worsened the situation. Pamela found herself trapped in a whirlwind of public attention and personal turmoil, struggling to hold on to the relationship she once believed in. As Tommy's jealousy grew, so did the tension between them. He began to exhibit increasingly erratic behavior, making accusations and reacting impulsively to even the slightest interactions with other men. Pamela, who had always been independent and confident, now found herself walking on eggshells. The love that had once felt so liberating now felt like a prison, where every step she took was under Tommy's watchful, suspicious eye. The emotional toll was immense, leaving Pamela feeling isolated and powerless in a relationship that had begun to consume her. The breaking point came one fateful day on the set of Baywatch, where Pamela was forced to confront the full force of Tommy's rage. In a fit of jealousy, Tommy stormed into Pamela's trailer and destroyed everything in sight. The outburst was not just a physical display of anger, it was a symbol of the unraveling relationship and the toxic environment they had created. Pamela, shaken to the core, knew that this was the moment where everything changed. The violence and destruction left her no choice but to call the authorities, and Tommy was arrested for the incident. This event marked the final blow in their once passionate love story. The relationship that had begun in a blaze of glory now burned out in a mess of chaos, jealousy, and emotional devastation. The damage was done, and Pamela was left to pick up the pieces of her life, now publicly intertwined with the fallout of her marriage to Tommy. The media, ever hungry for drama, continued to play a role in the dissolution of their relationship. As Tommy faced legal consequences, the press hounded Pamela, constantly seeking her side of the story, pushing her further into the public spotlight. What had once been a private connection was now fodder for the tabloids, further feeding the destructive cycle. In the end, Pamela's relationship with Tommy Lee was a tragic reminder of how love, when tainted by jealousy, control, and volatility, can quickly transform into something far more toxic than either party could have anticipated. Their passionate connection, which had once felt like destiny, ended in heartbreak and disillusionment. What seemed like a dream romance had become a cautionary tale of the dangers of toxic love, a story of a love that burned too bright, too fast, and ultimately consumed them both. Pamela Anderson's life, already under the constant scrutiny of the media, reached a new level of violation when a private home video of her and Tommy Lee was stolen and leaked to the public. The tape, which was meant to be an moment shared between the couple, became one of the most infamous leaks in pop culture history. What was private and personal was turned into a spectacle for the world to consume and mock, stripping Pamela of the one thing she could control, her privacy. The leak came at a time when Pamela was already navigating a life filled with media attention. But this breach was different. It was not just another headline. It was an invasion of the most personal part of her life. The video, which was never intended for public eyes, became a viral sensation, sparking a media frenzy. Overnight, Pamela found herself at the center of a scandal that would redefine her public image, whether she liked it or not. Despite her best efforts to contain the spread of the video and take legal action to block its distribution, the damage had already been done. The public reaction was swift and cruel. Instead of offering empathy for the violation she had endured, people quickly turned it into a source of mockery. Pamela was reduced to a punchline, her vulnerability exploited by the very industry that had once celebrated her beauty. What was supposed to be a private expression of love and intimacy was now fodder for late-night television, magazine covers, and endless gossip. The emotional toll it took on Pamela was unimaginable, but the world had moved on, looking for the next scandal, the next gossip to consume. However, despite the shame and hurt caused by the media's insensitivity, Pamela chose not to let the scandal define her. She could have easily allowed the leak to consume her, to isolate herself further, and retreat from the public eye. But Pamela had already learned to survive in an industry that often preyed on her personal life, and this time was no different. Instead of becoming a victim of her circumstances, she used the scandal as a stepping stone, determined to not let it be the defining moment of her legacy. Pamela's response to the video leak wasn't one of submission, but of resilience. She had faced public criticism and personal challenges her whole life, and this was just another chapter, one she refused to let dictate the narrative of her existence. The leak became part of her story, but it didn't become her entire story. In many ways, it reinforced the lessons she had learned in Hollywood about owning her image and taking control of her own narrative. In the aftermath of the leak, Pamela continued to carve out a career for herself, choosing to focus on projects that allowed her to transcend the image the media had constructed for her. She embraced her platform to advocate for causes that were important to her, particularly animal rights, and used her voice to speak out on political and social issues. Despite being dragged into the public eye for reasons outside of her control, Pamela worked hard to rebuild her public image on her terms. While the tape may have shattered her privacy, it also served as a turning point in how Pamela would engage with the world. She chose to stop running from the scandal and instead embrace the idea that her life, both the triumphs and the hardships, were her own to define. The leak no longer had the power to destroy her. It was just another chapter in her journey of self-discovery, resilience, and strength. Pamela Anderson's response to the infamous tape leak is a testament to her character. She refused to let a violation of her privacy dictate who she was. Instead of retreating or allowing the media to continue to define her, she chose to move forward, living her life unapologetically and using the experience as an opportunity to reclaim her power. In the end, Pamela didn't allow the scandal to rewrite her legacy. It became just another challenge she overcame on her path to becoming a woman in control of her own narrative. Pamela Anderson's life, for all its public spectacle and fame, took on a deeper meaning when she became a mother to her two sons, Brandon and Dylan. For the first time, something beyond her career, beyond the flashing cameras and headlines, became her priority. Motherhood, with all its joys and challenges, became the new center of her world. The chaotic whirlwind of her celebrity life, filled with flashing lights and constant attention, was now viewed through the lens of her responsibility as a mother. In a career that demanded constant public presence, Pamela made it clear that her children would always come first. The world had seen Pamela as a sex symbol, a beautiful face gracing magazine covers and screen time. But with motherhood, her identity shifted. While her fame made it almost impossible to escape the spotlight, becoming a mother allowed her to discover a deeper, more meaningful role in her life. Being a global sex symbol came with pressure, but raising two sons shifted Pamela's focus. She was determined to provide them with a stable, loving environment, one that was far removed from the media circus that often followed her every move. But the reality of being a celebrity mother was far from easy. The intense public interest in her life extended to her children, with paparazzi constantly lurking, eager to capture every moment. For Pamela, this intrusion was overwhelming. The privacy of her family was compromised at every turn, and she had to learn to navigate her career while protecting her children from the relentless scrutiny. Every trip to the grocery store, every outing in public became an event for the paparazzi to exploit. This constant invasion of her personal space made it nearly impossible for Pamela to find peace, yet she did everything she could to shield her children from the harsh realities of fame. One of the most heartbreaking moments for Pamela came during the filming of Barbed Wire, when she suffered a miscarriage. Despite the emotional and physical pain, she continued to work. The pressures of her career, coupled with the expectation to maintain her public image, often left Pamela feeling conflicted. On one hand, she was a mother grieving the loss of a child, but on the other hand, she was expected to push forward, to deliver her performance, and to keep the show going. This internal struggle between her role as a mother and her obligations as an actress in the public eye became a source of immense personal pain. Yet Pamela continued to prioritize her work and her commitment to her family. In these moments of struggle, Pamela's determination to protect her children and provide for them remained unwavering. The media's constant pressure did not define her as a mother. It only fueled her desire to create a safe and loving space for her sons. Far removed from the chaos of her fame, she refused to let the glare of the spotlight steal the precious moments of motherhood she valued so deeply. Even as she juggled career commitments, Pamela fought fiercely to ensure that her children were surrounded by love, not the harsh light of the cameras. Despite the challenges, Pamela remained a strong, devoted mother. She made sure that her sons were always at the heart of her decisions. Through every personal and professional difficulty, she remained committed to her role as a mother, knowing that it was the most important job she would ever have. The pressures of fame were immense, but they did not define her relationship with Brandon and Dylan. Pamela's children became her safe harbor in a world that was often overwhelming, and she worked tirelessly to shield them from the pitfalls of celebrity life. Her journey as a mother, in many ways, reshaped her. Pamela's commitment to her children proved to be the greatest act of defiance against the world that sought to define her. In the face of paparazzi, personal heartbreak, and public pressure, she emerged not just as an icon, but as a woman who put her family first. Through the tumult of fame, she created a sanctuary for her children, one where love, care, and stability were always the focus, no matter the external chaos. For Pamela, motherhood wasn't just another role. It was the very essence of who she had become, a defining part of her identity in a world that constantly tried to pull her in 1,000 different directions. Pamela Anderson's career evolved. So did her sense of purpose. No longer content to merely exist in the spotlight, she began to channel her experiences into activism, using her platform to fight for causes that resonated deeply with her. Fame had always come with its superficial expectations, but as time passed, Pamela found herself seeking something more meaningful, something that could contribute to the world in a way her career in entertainment never could. Pamela's passion for animal rights became a central focus of her advocacy work. She joined PETA, People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals, and began using her celebrity status to raise awareness about the mistreatment of animals in various industries. Her commitment to animal rights was not just about public appearances. It was a deep personal belief that she carried with her, from advocating for cruelty-free products to speaking out against the fur industry. Pamela's voice grew louder, urging people to reconsider their treatment of animals and to support more ethical choices. She didn't just use her fame to draw attention to the issue. She actively participated in campaigns, taking a stand that went far beyond the usual celebrity endorsement. But her activism didn't end with animal rights. Pamela also became a vocal critic of the industry, a subject that was often seen as taboo, especially for someone like her, who had risen to fame partly due to her hyper-sexualized image. As a woman who had been commodified by the very industry she now criticized, she had a unique and powerful perspective. Pamela spoke out against the exploitation of women in adult films and the broader impact of porn on societal views of sexuality. She used her platform to discuss the dangers of objectification, challenging the very culture that had once placed her on a pedestal as a symbol. Her involvement in political causes also grew, and she took on issues far beyond Hollywood's typical celebrity causes. One of the most notable was her support for Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks. Pamela, a vocal advocate for free speech and human rights, lent her voice to Assange's cause, fighting for the protection of whistleblowers and their ability to expose corruption without fear of retribution. Her support for Assange was driven by her belief in transparency and accountability, values that she felt were essential in a world often shrouded in secrecy and deceit. Pamela's activism reached into the realm of health awareness as well. She worked with organizations like the MAC AIDS Fund to spread knowledge about HIV and AIDS, focusing on prevention and education. In a time when the stigma surrounding HIV was still pervasive, Pamela used her visibility to destigmatize the disease and encourage open conversations. She worked alongside medical professionals and activists to raise funds and advocate for those living with the virus, helping to bring attention to the ongoing global health crisis. Her efforts were a testament to her belief that celebrity status could be used for something greater than self-promotion. It could be used to change lives and shape public perception. Through her work in animal rights, her critiques of the industry, her advocacy for political transparency, and her commitment to raising awareness about health issues, Pamela Anderson found a new sense of purpose beyond the superficial demands of fame. Her voice became stronger as she continued to lend it to causes that mattered, and she refused to be boxed in by the image the media had created of her. She understood that celebrity could be a powerful tool for change, and she was determined to use hers for something far more significant than the roles she played on screen. Pamela's journey into activism was not just about making a statement. It was about using her experiences, both good and bad, to educate, inspire, and challenge the world around her. She moved from being seen as an object of desire to becoming a force for change, showing that true power lies not in the fame one accumulates, but in how that fame is used to influence and better the world. In her pursuit of a higher purpose, Pamela Anderson found herself not just a symbol of beauty, but a voice for those who needed it most. In recent years, Pamela Anderson has stepped away from the constant public eye that once defined her every move, no longer confined by the image of the bombshell that made her famous in the 90s. She has embraced a more reflective, self-aware version of herself. This transformation has not been immediate, nor has it been without its struggles, but Pamela has evolved from a woman defined by the demands of Hollywood and the media to someone who controls her own narrative, with a new sense of ownership over who she is and how she wishes to be seen. The shift in Pamela's life is most evident in her decision to write a memoir. For years, her story had been told by others, by tabloid headlines, by public speculation, and by the unrelenting gaze of the media. Now, Pamela took the pen in her own hands, choosing to share her experiences, struggles, and triumphs on her own terms. The act of writing her memoir was more than just a way to chronicle her life. It was an act of reclamation. Through the process, she confronted the pain and joy of her past, taking back the narrative that had often been manipulated by outsiders who only cared about the scandal and spectacle. It was in these pages that Pamela finally had the freedom to be vulnerable, to show the world a side of herself that had been hidden beneath the layers of fame, beauty, and judgment. Her story is one of resilience, not just in the face of public scrutiny, but in the journey of self-discovery. Pamela's life has been marked by fame, scandal, love, and loss, all of which have shaped her into a woman with far more depth than the media ever gave her credit for. While the world may have once seen her as a symbol of superficiality, Pamela has long since realized that she is much more than the roles she played on screen or the image created by the media. She is a woman who has experienced heartbreak, failure, and growth, and in the process, she has found strength in her vulnerability. The beauty of Pamela's transformation lies in her ability to embrace both the pain and the triumphs of her past. She no longer seeks validation from the world that once reduced her to a caricature. Instead, she has found peace in herself and in the authenticity of her journey. No longer needing to prove herself to anyone, she has cultivated a deep sense of self-love, understanding that her worth is not defined by the way the world perceives her, but by how she perceives herself. As a woman who has lived through intense public judgment, Pamela's journey of self-acceptance is a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit. She has faced some of the harshest criticisms, from public scandals to personal betrayals, yet she continues to rise above it all with grace and strength. Pamela's story is no longer one of a symbol or a tabloid headline. It is the story of a woman who has learned to embrace every part of herself, flaws and all, and has emerged stronger because of it. Pamela Anderson's decision to rewrite her narrative is not just a personal evolution, it is a radical act in a world that often forces women into predefined roles. She is no longer just the icon of the 90s. She is a symbol of reinvention and the power of self-love. Through her memoir and the way she lives her life, Pamela has become a beacon of resilience, a woman who has faced the world's judgments and has come out the other side with her sense of self intact. She has shown that it is possible to reclaim your story, rewrite your own narrative, and live a life defined not by others, but by the choices you make for yourself. Today, Pamela Anderson is a woman who understands the importance of living on her own terms. She has transformed her image from one defined by the media to one shaped by her own experiences and self-empowerment. She has taken control of her past and used it to create a future where her worth is no longer measured by external approval, but by the strength and wisdom she has gained through the years. Pamela's journey is a reminder that it is never too late to redefine who you are and to embrace the power of self-love, no matter how the world tries to label you. Pamela Anderson's life is more than just a tale of fame and fortune. It is a story of survival and transformation. Throughout her career, she faced immense public scrutiny, personal tragedy, and the constant pressure to conform to the expectations of others. From being a global symbol to enduring the harshest invasions of her privacy, Pamela's journey has been anything but easy. Yet, through it all, she has shown an unwavering resilience, proving that the human spirit can endure even the harshest trials. Pamela's story is a testament to the power of redefining oneself. In a world that sought to define her by her appearance, her relationships, or her past mistakes, she refused to remain confined to the roles others wanted her to play. She transformed from a Hollywood bombshell into an empowered woman, learning to embrace every part of her life, the successes and the setbacks, the highs and the lows. She no longer allowed the world's judgments to shape her identity. Instead, she took control of her own narrative. This transformation wasn't just about shedding an old image. It was about reclaiming her power and rediscovering her true self. Pamela found strength in vulnerability, using her experiences to fuel her activism and to become an advocate for causes she deeply believed in. She showed that it's possible to rise above the chaos, to turn the pain of the past into a catalyst for growth, and to create a future that is defined by your own choices, not the perceptions of others. Pamela Anderson's journey is a reminder that no matter how difficult life may be, you can always rise again through self-reflection, resilience, and the courage to embrace change. She proved that it's possible to transform your life and emerge stronger, wiser, and more authentic. Her story offers hope to anyone who has ever felt trapped by their past or burdened by the weight of public opinion. You have the power to rewrite your story and take ownership of your life. Pamela's transformation is not just about surviving. It's about thriving on your own terms.